probably did. I don't know what to say. No, for me, the reason why these sorts of campaigns are important is, as you all know, my daughter is the one thing in my life that means the world to me. And I was so naive to think about female football. I didn't understand it, I didn't get it, I didn't appreciate it. And some people along here actually criticised me at certain stages for not knowing anything about women's football. And I didn't, and I'm not lying. And that was 3-4 years ago. Over a period of time, getting to know some of the girls and getting to understand how the women's games work and how I see the lack of investment and the lack of support that it gets. And then obviously off the back of what we just had in the summer and how it should start to evolve and hopefully become a greater part of our industry. To me, football is the greatest sport in the world. It transcends itself across every country. It is a language that everybody speaks. And that should be whether male or female. And it was only, at one stage, it was only for us in that way. And that's how people seen it. And now the more and more I've watched the girls at the weekend and how fantastic they play, and more girls. There's 2 young girls who play for our under 12s. And the two of my favourite young players in the whole academy, boys and girls, and they are outstanding. Their joy for football, it comes through, and now they're seeing an opportunity for this sport to grow. Equally on top of that, not just within the professional game, our attendance is starting to increase. I won't name the football club, but I was at a football club not too long ago. Probably just named it. My last one. and the female take-up of fans was almost zero, and it was generally males 60 years of age or above, and the sort of everything was only looking in one direction, and how the game never changed and never evolved. And actually, I think we're immensely proud of what we're starting to achieve, and there's some very talented, some, not all, people that sit down here, and obviously what Lauren does as a player, what Kath does, Kath, and Robyn Cowen I've got to know the last 4 years, and truly inspirational about how she's broke so many boundaries down for females in our sport. And I know she's doing a lot of the hosting, like, but people like her are unbelievable role models, people like my daughter, and knowing that she can stay within our sport and have an opportunity to earn a living, which is fantastic. Then we've got Gemma, who's just come on full time as our general manager. Again, a very inspirational person who obviously is a footballer, did really well. When we were looking for a general manager, we were looking for somebody who could come in and actually, can we have a leadership group with, I had an argument with Lauren over this. We were talking about, as we've got a great leadership group, brilliant. Shouldn't we be talking, whatever, I can't say the word because it won't go down too well, that camera's looking at me. And she said, you don't have any females on it. We are making decisions for our women's team and our RTC with no female figure on it who understood what was actually going on. And since then, obviously, Gemma's come in and made a massive impression on what we're trying to change and how we're trying to move forward. And then Amy was my first appointment change as a manager here. That went well. No, I remember having a conversation with Amy. It was at the Kasam when Prox left. And Amy came to me and said, listen, I'm ready for a step up. I've been working with the first team for a long period of time now. I went away and I'll be honest, I'm the game he knows. It was like, a female physiotherapist. How will that leading it? Now Amy doesn't even know this. And it was something I was really thinking, why? What's different? And since that day, our medical team's been one of the best. I know our injuries aren't great, but that's not down to the medical team, it's down to the coach and the sports scientists. But we're so lucky to have people like Amy who work so hard and now been with us for 5 years and leading the sports medicine side of our football club. It's another part that we're immensely proud of. So I'll stop waffling, I believe, and hand over to someone who's much better waffling than me. So
I wouldn't say that. Thank you so much, Carl, and thank you everyone for coming. Really appreciate it. Thank you very much to Grace for organising this. I think what we'll do is we'll start with just introducing everyone and just a few words about yourself. Should we start with Amy? Just talk about yourself and your role and how you came to be at Oxford United.
Okay, to me. So I'm Amy. I'm obviously the one that runs on the pitch when we get injuries. Hopefully we won't get too many more injuries going forward. So it has been quite busy. But obviously I head up all, like Carl said, I head up all the medical side of things. So whether that be when players do get injured, making sure they get back as quickly as possible because we're a performance setting. but in the safest manner possible so that re-injuries don't occur. But also trying to help the lads in regards to prevention of injuries as well, and that's a big part of my role. And also just player care as well, as making sure all the players are good. So that's what I kind of do, I guess, on a day-to-day basis. Before this, I was, I've been around the club for quite a long time now. I was trying to work out years before, but I've been a part of the girls' programme, the boys' programme, and the when we were in the Women's Super League, I was also the physio for that as well. And it's nice to actually have that whole, what do you call it, the whole
Just one
group.
club.
Yeah, that whole group. I've sort of done it all now, which is good. So yeah.
Gemma, it's a new role for you, isn't it? Although I've been in football for quite some time, haven't you?
Yes, it is. So I've been on role third week now. So I've played football from the age of 10. So I've come through pathways and obviously come into senior football. And as Carl said, just finished playing for the women's side at the end of last season. So I am really excited to be back at the club and help kind of push the women's and girls side forward.
Kath, that's no way we're going to start with you. What haven't you done?
I've been around the club for a little while. I was a player for 8 years, caused Amy plenty of problems when she worked with the women's team then. After retiring, I started coaching with a local side, and then was very lucky to be asked to come across to form some of Liam Gilbert, who's the women's manager's new coaching staff. So I'm one of the assistant coaches there, working with the players now with the women's team. Some of you might recognise me. I've also worked with the men's side and social media, and for my sins with Chris Williams, doing bits on men's match days, home and away, and through the week as well. So similar to Amy, lots of different aspects of the club. I was a season ticket holder for years before all of that as well. So lots of aspects of the club over the years.
And Lauren, tell us.
Been at the club, I think that's 6 years now. I think we worked out the other day. Didn't even come in as a player originally. I remember getting a phone call from Richard Blackmore. The day my contract expired at another club, and said, "Fancy playing football for us?" And I said, "No, not really." He said, but no, genuinely, I wasn't interested. And then he's come down. He says, "Are you coaching, aren't you?" And I said, "Yeah, I'll come down, look at a coaching position." Come down, met him and Les, and then literally about half an hour later ended up signing a contract for WSL. So I've been here 6 years later. So now women's first team captain, and also run our girls academy and development centres.
Fantastic stuff. So if you have any questions, I think we'll probably wait till the end, but just do remember them. So I think just a general overview, I think it'd be really interesting to find out how you all got into what I hope is kind of your dream jobs. I mean, Amy, starting with you, I mean, I guess you always wanted to be on the medical side of things, but was it always football, sports, that sort of thing?
I think from a young age I've always been very sporty, played a lot of football and some other sports as well. And then I was speaking to a couple of people when I still didn't know what I wanted to do when I was 18, to be honest, and I'd done my A-levels, probably done my first year of the A-levels. And I thought actually maybe physiotherapy, speaking to my auntie was one of them actually. And then I thought, can you combine the two? Can you be a physio working in sports? So I went off and did some, work experiences in different places. And then I went to Bristol, did my undergrad, and then when I graduated from that, I was working down in Bristol, and then again, someone sort of gave me a call about there might be a position open up here, and I'm still here. So, but that's sort of kind of how I came about it. But definitely very sporty, definitely into my football, and then I love being a physiotherapist. So to be able to combine the two, for as much as sometimes I might moan about the hours and all the rest of it, actually I'm very lucky and very privileged to be in this position.
I think that goes without saying. Everyone's allowed to moan, by the way, about their jobs, because it's not all glamour.
It's not. It's definitely not. Working football is a tough. I think it doesn't matter what department you work in. It is a tough. It's a tough environment to work in. And yeah, I think sometimes people might not have that understanding. It's not just about the training aspect of it. It's the hours away from the pitch that to do the best for the Saturday performance. So.
What does the sort of average week then look like for you? Or is that no such thing?
There is no average week, and that's one part of it. I like about it in some
Yeah.
ways. You never know what it's going to be day to day. An average day for me would be getting the injured boys in early. Injured players will always be the first in the building, last out. And then obviously from a staff's point of view, we're even earlier in to make sure that day is all set up for them. But on top of that, you're also looking after your fit players and making sure that they're ready and available for games as well. So it's a busy department, as I said, particularly at the moment. But hopefully, fingers crossed, we get a few players back soon. But yeah, and you know, you do normally a normal week for us. If we had a Saturday, you know, you're normally looking at Wednesday bit of downtime and a Sunday bit of downtime. But if injured players have got to be in, we've still got to look after those players and provide that 7-day service to them as well. So
It's a huge responsibility, actually, isn't it? So, I mean,
Yeah.
and you were just saying outside that your team, thankfully for you, has grown. But I guess when you started out,
definitely. When I started, when the first year I was doing it, it was only me and one other full-time staff member. And I think the demands of the role and the department and what players expect and what management expect has grown so much. So you have to bring other members of your team in, because otherwise you'd have a queue outside your door for hours of people waiting to be seen. So we have 4 full-time members of staff that work within the first team, and it's a department that we've grown over the last 3-4 years. And it works really well with the different sort of areas of expertise we've got, but also the personalities to deal with some players like some staff members and others like the others. So you get to know what players are going to come to you and what players are going to come to other people, and that's quite interesting. So
that is great.
yeah.
My son's just started nursery, and that's really, it's like they've been allocated a key work.
Oh, is it? Yeah.
So it sounds very much like
Similar,
that.
yeah.
But yeah, I think there are quite a few similarities with toddlers, aren't there? Gemma, I'm really interested in this role. I mean, first of all, could you explain a little bit about it? Because it's so general manager, which sounds a little bit vague to the layman.
I think it is quite big.
And is it a new role within, like a created role in the women's team? Because I don't think many women's teams actually who aren't in the WSL actually have this sort of role. So just tell us a bit about it.
Yeah, no, I think the role has come about because I think Carl and the rest of the leadership group think that it's a good time, especially with women's football, the excitement of women's football as it is now. It's a good time to get someone in to kind of oversee the whole of the strategy, I think, basically, so the whole of the women's side and the girls' side. So for me, my main responsibility is, I think, it's going to be just helping with the day-to-day kind of running of the side. So I'll be spending a lot of time with Liam, who's the first team coach, manager, and Loz, who runs the RTC and the girls' side of it, as well as being captain. So yeah, to relieve them of some of the responsibilities they have, because they've also got full-time jobs, and it's a big job to run the boys and girls' side, and not only to do that, to move it forward as well. So I think for my role coming in is to come and help relieve them of some of their duties, so that they can spend more and more time with the girls on the pitch, and also help put strategies together to help the club move forward.
And is this a sort of role that you kind of were aiming to do? Was it even one that kind of you contemplated that could happen for you?
No, if I'm honest, because I've always played football. I've never worked in football before. I've had very different jobs. My background was in finance, and then after I had children, I ran an office for a pump engineering company. So completely different to this. But I think coming towards the end of my career and finishing playing, I didn't want to completely get away from football. So I've been asked whether I wanted to coach women's sides or kids teams, which never really interested me, if I'm honest. It's not really me. I'll leave that to the better coach. I didn't think I'd be very good at it, to be honest. So when this different type of role came up, I thought, you know what, yeah, that's something I'd really like to do.
Do you feel like your background, sort of finance, might have helped you?
I think so, yes. Yeah.
So you can really draw on your past experiences.
Yes, I think so. Yeah.
That's great stuff. Kath, again, where do we start? We start from the beginning. So you were obviously playing.
Yeah.
You're a football obsessive, I know. You've also got your own business. Is that still right?
Yeah, so I don't actually, at this current moment in time, I don't work for the football club for the first time in a little while. Stop celebrating at the back.
though. Still sticking around.
As I said, I was a season ticket holder. I was a player at the same time, and I got to know Chris Williams from a very long time ago, before anything went WSL and much more professional as it is now. I played and was captain of the women's team, so he used to also write the match reports to send to Chris for the programme. And we got to know each other from that, and that sort of took me into the social media side.
What was that like?
It had its ups and downs. It very much depended on how the men's team was doing at the time. So across the 4 years I was at the club a week before Michael Appleton left, so I think he took it personally, something against me. But it all ended up all right in the end. We'll ignore the bit in the middle. I did. Social media is something I really enjoyed. It's a completely different side of the football club, and I think as a fan doing it, and I know Liam, who does a lot of it now, will probably say a similar thing, as a fan who gets to see both sides of it, it's quite an important role to bring to fans something that happens a lot of the time behind the scenes, and you only see, as Amy's talked about, what she does through the week, and a lot of times people only see the end result on a Saturday, and they judge so much of a football club and everybody involved in the football club with what happens at 4:30 on a Saturday. And I think a lot of that role in social media was to try and hopefully bring people closer to the players and to the staff and to everybody at the football club. And I have to say, working with Carl, as much as I don't like to give him compliments because he doesn't need them, was good because of the amount of access that he was able to give me at the time, to come in and see some of that stuff. And as I say, bring it to fans, because I think that's what you can do at a local football club that maybe a Premier League club, they can't do that access quite so much, although they are now trying, because I think they've seen examples of how important that link is as they drift away. Social media really is that thing that brings it back to an individual who's just a fan and connecting with it. So that's the social media side.
Yeah, and unlike Gemma, who seriously sounds like just wasn't interested in coaching, so is that something you were always interested in? To be honest, not when I was a player. I never really thought about anything after playing. It was just, that's what I loved to do, and I just wanted to play football. And then it got to the point where when the team were elected into the WSL, I was 31, and manager Richard Blackmore took me aside and said, "Kath, it's time." Which was the worst day of my life. And I retired, and then I went and played lower league again. And then when I retired the second time, I did think, I can't let it go. I can't not be in the changing room. Being in the changing room was a huge part of my life. So I did my level 1 coaching then, and coached with Banbury United women for a bit, and then because I was still working for the football club, I was in the right place at the right time when Liam Gilbert was looking for an assistant to help him, as he took over quite a big job of when the club dropped out of the professional structure of the Women's League and into Tier 3 as we are now. And I've been part of that for the last 4 years, looking to rebuild. So, and now coaching, I've done a few more coaching badges since then, and it's something that I find, as I said, never really thought about it, but it's a way that I think I've been able to put what I learned from playing, hopefully, into the game. And Lauren, you're obviously still playing, but your full-time job is bringing up the next generation. Again, is that something that you kind of thought about, that you wanted to do?
No, absolutely not. No, absolutely not.
Expertise.
I've got such a weird life. I've got such a weird job in terms of my full-time job. I'm a teacher, head of football at a football education programme. On the other side, I work for the football club that run our whole girls' academy from 8s to 16s in the academy and development centre, and then I try and play football on top of that. So, no, if you ask me what I wanted to be when I was older, it definitely wasn't a teacher or head of football. It was, I don't know, I think I always wanted to be a policewoman or something like that. Bizarre, but here I am. But I love it, and I love giving players opportunities. It's probably something I didn't have when I was younger, and I was quite fortunate. I played grassroots for years, went and signed at academy at 14, 15, had a great football education up until probably about 16, 17, and then the whole cliche, bit of an injury, puts you off balance a little bit, and I was at the game for about 18 months because of a head injury, and I was at Bristol at the time, and they were incredible with me in terms of to keep me involved in the game, because I kind of wanted to go a little bit gun-ho and explore different avenues, and I didn't. They were very good at me and they put me through my coaching, the badges, level 1, level 2 youth awards. And then one thing that particularly like sparked my interest in football was a woman called Lowry Williams, who was the matchday operations at Bristol City, and she was one of the most incredible people I've ever met.
Is she at Wales now?
She was at Wales, was with England when Mark went, and then now she's head of, well, the Welsh. And got involved in matchday experience, and obviously I couldn't play, so I was involved in the operations, how the match days run, how do we build attendances. And when you look at where Bristol were there, we were, you know, won the FA Cup, Champions League, we were top of the table, and it was such an incredible time for women's football, and I was so fortunate to be a part of that atmosphere. I think when we played in the FA Cup final, and we travelled to Donny Bells, and we took like something like 600 people from Bristol, and like that for me sparked like this was going to be something special. And luckily I got back to playing footy. I dropped down a tier, continued with my coaching badges, moved to Oxford. Weirdly, I was working in nightclubs at this point. Come to the club, and then I started coaching, and I think I started a teaching role around the corner, and then a marketing job come up in the WSL. So I think like similar to you, I was playing in the WSL, but I was also doing the marketing for the WSL. So like Kath, I was playing away to, I don't know, Durham, having to write a rap match report on the way back, so I could then put it on social media, and that was difficult. Obviously then we dropped out of the WSL because of what the FA decided to do. Each their own, but we are where we are now, and that role came out. I then took over the role of academy manager in the RTC, and that's been interesting. Very interesting. But if you look at what we've got now compared to what we had then, you know, we're doing incredible, and that's down to all the coaches and staff that we've had on board over the years that have gone through the hard times and really made the programme grow. And we've got something like now 6 internationals that have played across the system. We've got progression into the first team, which is probably some of the best numbers that we've seen for a very long time, but not only at this football club, but in football clubs in general, especially at this level. The opportunities we can give to our players is amazing, and I think the experiences I had as a youngster and I was able to experience as a player, I was able to experience kind of why do we play football actually, what do the supporters want, who are our supporters, who's the target audience. And I think all of that's probably helped me in my role there. And then obviously I get to the joys of playing footy every Sunday as well, with an incredible bunch of players, most staff, and not all staff.
Some of them at the back, really.
And it ties in really nicely. And then obviously with my other role as a teacher at 16 to 19 education, that kind of actually don't always want to develop footballers, I just want to develop people. And if I can't make you better at football, I want to make you a better person, and that's kind of my life motto now, moving forward, and if I can, then I can.
Fantastic. Just one thing, did you say you were writing match reports on games that you'd played in?
I'd always pick myself up there.
That's the way to do it.
It was so difficult though, because I think I might actually have like a good game, and I can't pick myself up too much here, and then the games I have shockers, I'm like, oh,
play it out.
Yeah.
Stop Kath.
Exactly. Hopefully we've kind of illustrated that there are loads of roles in football, men's and women's, at all sorts, you know, from all ages, that actually maybe you didn't realise were possible as well. So I think it's really illustrative, like Kath alone really, most of them. So yeah.
On that, it is a little bit, you can still sort of forge a role. I think a lot of us have got the roles that we have through force of will, through love of football, and through wanting to be around it. And there has been, like, I'm sure Amy would say, quite a lot of her roles have come from just being there. And as I say, I got my role working with Liam and the women's team from being in the right place at the right time. But that's because I forced myself into the situation that I was in there as well. And as Loz says, a lot of it sounds like they're not coincidences, but you know, right place, right time. But you do have to put yourself in the right place, and I think that comes from just loving football. And as Carl said, it's the greatest sport in the world, and it really does have the ability to create these sorts of roles. But a lot of us did them way before it was a professional career in any way. You know, volunteer roles of like, I just want to be involved in football.
I was going to say, I don't think I've ever actually applied for a job to work in football. weirdly. Like Kath just said there, I think everything I've done is because I've just been there. And I think what is so important to see is when I started working in football, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 years ago, whatever it was, and now there wasn't jobs to apply for within, you know, especially the female into the game, men or women's game. And now you look at the role that's come up for Gemma, that we're advertising for this. I think it's shown how society's changed, the impact of, you know, England and the Lionesses and what they've done there, and just change in employment. I think it's so important to recognise that, and hopefully now, and I say this, obviously we did phenomenal at the Euros, but people don't just jump on the bandwagon for a short amount of time. People actually buy into it, because not because it's to show off or do it because it's a trend, but actually do it because it's the right thing to do. And actually, if you're good enough at the role, female, male, whatever, I think it should be regardless whatever they are.
Absolutely. Well, I think also the point that Carl brought up, that you brought up with him, if you've if you've got a committee of men and also, you know, let's be honest, sort of white middle-aged men anywhere, you're only going to get one perspective. So it's a benefit to. I'm
not middle-aged, by the way.
I wasn't referring to you, but just in any committee or anything you're organising, you're only going to get one perspective. It just makes everything richer to kind of really try and have as many as possible. I do want to just ask, especially Amy, because you particularly work in the men's game. When you were coming up, you know, you wanted to do what you wanted to do, and you know your role has grown. Did you face any barriers that you felt were because of your sex?
It's a tricky one. What I will say is, when I started, I'm pretty sure I was the first female to do the lead role within the whole of the sort of football league. I'm pretty sure that's right, isn't it? Yeah. So obviously, when that position became available, a bit like what you were just saying there, Lauren, I sort of had to put myself forward, because I'm assuming Carl at the time probably didn't even realise that maybe I did want that, you know, did want that role. And
no, I didn't.
Yeah. So and at that time, to be fair, I was getting to a point in my career pathway where I was thinking, I've done the assistant role now. My next step and what I want to do is I want to be a lead physio in a football club. To do it obviously for Oxford was for me would have been the best option, but I was getting to a point where if my old boss Prox hadn't left at that point, I was starting to look elsewhere. Were there jobs available? Yes, there are jobs available. Whether they would have picked up the CV, I don't know, because if they'd seen Amy as that first, I don't know at the time. What I can say from this point is, short time of doing this role, the sort of 5th season I'm doing this now, is what's quite nice is that, I was just saying this to someone outside, is it's not now I'm the only female. It's a lot more week to week now. I know there'll be females within the medical teams that I know I'm going to go and meet. And I think that's definitely changed over the last couple of years.
Would you say like on a, say like a season,
yeah,
sort of on each match day, would you expect to see at least one?
I think now, whether that's medical, whether that's you know sports science, or whether that's part of it might not necessarily be every week with the actual football coaching team and all the rest of it themselves, but I'm certainly noticing it a lot more. Whereas 3 years ago, it'd be, I'm going to so-and-so, I know that there's a female there, I'm going to go have a chat with her. Do you know what I mean? Whereas now it's a lot more, nice to meet you sort of thing. And that's really nice to see, because as I said, the first year, I generally think it was just me on my own. So, so I don't know if that answers your question.
Oh no, well, again, it is a difficult one, because you don't really know, do you? Yeah. Was it right that you actually approached Carl, though? You took it upon yourself to say, look, this is what I want for my career?
I basically put myself forward and said, listen, this is where I feel I'm at in my career pathway and my career progression, and I know I'm ready for this role. I've got, hopefully got the respect of the players, the staff that are already here. Obviously at the time I didn't know Carl very well at that point in time. I think it was about sort of 6 months later that this role became available after he'd come in. I approached it, and I got backing from the staff that know me for a long time and that sort of thing. But definitely what I would say is that how I've always felt, and whether this was, I don't feel it now, but when I was coming up through the pathway, as a female, you feel like you've got more eyes on you. So I always felt that I had to, especially that first year, that second, even going into the second year of me doing this role, I definitely felt like I had to work my socks off.
Yeah.
and do a damn good role in doing that. Now, that's my mentality to do that anyway, but I definitely felt that wrongly or rightly.
I don't think you're alone.
Yeah.
I think we all feel like that.
Yeah.
That especially in a sort of traditional male workplace, that you can't make a mistake, basically. That's how I feel as well. But
I was going to say, that would
yeah.
be one to turn around whilst you're hosting. Obviously, you're probably one of the ones, along with Amy, who's in the most male-dominated environment. As for those who may or may not know, Robyn does commentary for the BBC, was the second woman to ever commentate on Match of the Day after Jackie Oatley, and obviously was the lead commentator on the Euros final this summer. So that is one, like I said, it's a hugely front of house almost, or whilst you're behind the camera, it's the one
Very
that people will judge you on a lot of things, and that's a very traditionally male dominated, probably more so than any of the rest of us.
Yeah,
it is still unusual to hear a female voice on commentary.
I think, on commentary, yes, although I agree with Amy, like, I used to kind of count the women in the press room, and now it's kind of not a weird thing to see that. And no, but when I do men's football, I feel a lot more anxious. When I do women's football, I think you probably notice I feel totally relaxed, because you just don't want, if you make a mistake, everyone will say, oh, it's because she's a woman, she doesn't know anything about the game. So that's and you're kind of almost carrying
the responsibility of
other women, because they tie you with the same brush, wrongly obviously, but in your head you feel like you have to work twice as hard and be totally flawless, which obviously you can't be, because it's not, especially in commentary, it's just not possible. Gemma, anything to add in terms of, have you ever faced any barriers? Apart from, as a player, obviously, there's a ceiling, especially, presumably during your sort of peak years, especially in your early years.
Yeah.
You can't, basically, it's not a career, is it?
No.
At that point.
No, it was never a career. And to be honest, as a youngster, I never thought it could be possible to have a career in football, because it was so long ago. And like the differences now is incredible, because as a youngster I didn't care who knew I played football. Like as a primary school girl, I'd go and play football with the boys at lunchtime. I wouldn't care. And then I got to kind of secondary school, and you hear some comments and things. And in secondary school, I kept it from everybody. Like playing football, I didn't want anyone to know I played football at secondary school. Like we'd play at the weekend, and there'd be match reports that come out in the local newspaper on a Thursday. And I used to just sit there hoping that no one read it at school. Like no one, I just did not like people to know I played because of just the remarks I got at school.
Well, like you're boyish. And
I was a tomboy. Like, she's a tomboy. She should be playing football.
By the way, that phrase needs to be banned.
Just remarks from the boys about how I should be playing football, and it's completely different now. My daughter, I've got a 10-year-old daughter who plays football at school every day, absolutely loves it, and at the beginning, probably 2-3 years ago, she'd be last picked, but she'd carry on, bless her. I got so much respect for her. She'd keep going back and playing, and now the boys are picking her first, and she's got some other girls to come in at lunchtime. There are probably 3 or 4 girls playing, and the boys have accepted it.
I think that's the key, isn't it? You don't want to be the only one. Sort of spotlight on you.
And it's just the acceptance now.
It's not weird that they play football.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Absolutely.
You put her through an intensive coaching programme, so she's picked first now.
I said, no, just keep playing, and eventually I think they'll accept you. If they can see that you actually love the game and you're actually not as bad as they think you are.
Well, exactly.
But that's similar to what you're saying, is that assumption first off that you can't be able to do it, even for a 10-year-old you have to prove yourself before people recognise it, rather than just coming in on a level playing field. That's interesting. You said that in a way that's still there, but I think that flick over the hurdle of proving yourself is probably I would hope it's a lot quicker now than in the past.
Any of your sort of roles that you felt, Kath, that you that you felt that you were, had to work harder, or that you were being judged maybe a little bit more because you were a woman working in traditional workplace?
I don't think necessarily that I've been judged on it specifically, or had to work harder, particularly when I was working with the men's team, because quite often people don't know who is doing the Twitter, for example. I do find it funny that I used to get called lads quite a lot, and on the assumption that the person on the other end must be a man. I also used to get emails to Keith because my email address was Faulkner, and I think people just didn't assume that it would be a Kath. It must be a Keith. One of the ones I did find was working with social media. I, at least twice going into football clubs, was given a bib before I said anything because they assumed I was a photographer, which I found fascinating. But I guess that's who they're seeing now as women going into press rooms, that before I said anything I walked up to the counter to give my name and they gave me a bib, which I found quite an interesting one. I don't know how that sits, or if that's just a sign that potentially there's a lot more female photographers within that side of it, which is also a good barrier being broken down, but I did find that quite an interesting one.
That is interesting, yeah. Lauren, I mean, you're sort of, I mean, I want to stretch myself, you're a lot younger. So I'm hoping that you've seen the change a little bit more, although I'm sure you've come across.
Yeah, I mean, as a youngster, standard stuff, you get called names, whatever, but you play, you get on with it. I think you just become quite immune to it all, and you kind of block it out. And looking back at it now, if I ever had a youngster, if I ever see anyone say anything to one of our younger players, I'd go mental. But like a bit just like our girls playing boys leagues are 10s, 11s, 12s and 13s, and when we first went in about 4 years ago, it was embarrassing on the opposition in terms of what they were calling them, saying, oh, we're playing a girls team today, this is going to be easy. 3-4 years later, actually the respect that the boys have, or the mixed teams have, you have to say now, sorry, and the opposition coaches is so much better. And it's a shame that it was ever like that in the first place, but I'm glad, I guess, it's changed, because now they're being respectful because they're realising actually these girls can play a little bit here. And we're seeing it more and more where this is academy football, but some of our girls are being picked up now by boys teams from our academy, and you know, so that recognition of them elite programs coming after our girls, annoying for us obviously because we're losing our players, but incredible in terms of that change has happened. And don't get me wrong, from players' point of view is fine, but I think where I see it a lot more now is probably in an employment point of view. I've sat in situations with coaches, I've sat in situations against opposition managers, and I remember going in to do a practice sometime, and I was with some under-19 boys and thinking, right, fine, I'm right here. And the head coach came over to me and says, I'll talk you through the practice, whatever. They go, you need to do a phase of play, and I'm like, yeah, cool, I'll plan something. He goes, I'll sit you down, because I know you probably don't know what a phase of play is. And from that moment, I was like, yeah. So, and I argue with so many people. Like, I'll argue with so many people, and I think I've had to become like that to get any sort of respect. And I think a woman in a male-dominated industry, and what it is, I've had to be quite forceful and quite dominant, because if I just back down and shied away, I don't think I ever got to where I am now. And I'm happy falling out with people, because I know most of the time I'm right. Yeah. I'm fine saying that, like, I know most of the time I'm right. And even when I'm not right, I'll make sure I flip it that I am right. So I've had to become that sort of person. To I lead a football education programme, I lead a football academy. I have to be quite strong and quite powerful, I guess, to make sure I'm listened and heard and respected. And it's a shame it's had to be like that, but it's made me a better person, so thanks.
Yeah. No, that's really interesting, because you feel like actually there's a lot of women who are lost because, you know, who would be really good for these roles, but who actually were not as strong as you and not as kind of, you know, well, this is what you'll be called as a woman. You'll be called argumentative and bossy.
Sassy.
Yeah, sassy.
Yeah.
And, you know, if you're a man, it's kind of like being, you know, strong and, you know,
it's a shame,
decisive.
yeah. And this is what I go back to my point earlier. If you are genuinely good enough for the job, it frustrates the hell out of me why they won't get selected because you're male or female. And it's the same on the flip side when people only hire females. Like, why can't a man do that? I think it's getting better, but I do think in the employment, and this isn't just in footy, this is in employment anywhere, not enough respect given, and I do feel for a lot of people, because there are some phenomenal people out there that work in the industry that don't get a look in just because they're a female.
Yeah.
You do have to be quite forceful or not care, I think, in a lot of these
A
roles.
thick skin.
Like, yeah, like you're saying about the comments that are given, you almost take it on as a badge of honour. I know I did when I played when I was 12, 13. It became who I was, that I was the girl that played football when nobody else did. And I had to make that part of my personality, because otherwise maybe it would have affected me. But it's almost like if I just went, okay, I'll be that person, then that enabled me to go and do that. But it's not everybody is able to do that, and I think you do, like in a lot of industries, it's not just like you said, it's not just football, but you lose talent if you insist that the only people who can break through are ones that are willing to put up with a bit of extra crap.
Yeah, and that's obviously not right. And that kind of leads me on to the point, because you know, Amy, you said that you approached Carl about that, and I just think there are still a lot of women, myself included, who are really not that sort of I don't want to say forceful, that's all proactive. that proactive. You kind of, you know, I think there's some sort of statistic that when there's a job interview come up and the criteria, if a woman feels like she doesn't match all of it, she won't bother applying. Whereas if a man looks at it and kind of goes, oh, I can do it, you know, I'll just do it. So I do think, you know, I was very fortunate that I had a great mentor in Jerome said, he basically said, you're doing this, and that was it. If you kind of
good co-commentator.
I did, but you know that FA Cup game, right? He just said, okay, you're going to do this now, and it wasn't like, oh, would you like to? It was, you're doing it, and so he obviously knew that was the thing I needed.
So he actually believed in yourself.
Exactly.
More than you did
Totally.
at the time.
So I was very fortunate
Yeah.
that I had that sort of person,
Yeah.
because I'm just a bag of anxiety the whole time. So I need people like that. So I do think like people like me, I'm very fortunate, might fall by the wayside a little bit, because I just kind of turned up, thought it would be all right, and yeah, but he's obviously believed in me. I think the other thing I'd like to pick up is what one of the comments Carl said at the beginning here about him changing his attitude. Obviously there are some people who will never change. He's got a few, but for me, that especially in my job, all my role models, all the people I looked up to were men. There wasn't any women commentators really or broadcasters, but thankfully for me, the men that I kind of fell in with at Radio Oxford were all very supportive, and they were allies, and they didn't really see me as any different. So I think that's the main, for her game too in particular, that's a big message to spread to everyone, but particularly men, is that be a good ally, and it makes such a difference. It's changed my life, changed my career, just because, you know, my sex didn't come into it, just saw that I was good, and that was it. Was there anyone in particular for you, Amy, that you kind of, that helped you along, or that you was a sort of role model for you, male or female?
I learned a lot from the previous head of medical, for sure, in regards to not necessarily the physiotherapy side of it, but kind of player management and how to be around the kind of first team coaching staff and that side of it. There's not, in regards to like my role, when, as I said before, like when I was doing it, I can't really think of anyone like a female kind of role model. I actually can't think of one, which is a bit.
But that's the thing, you will be, hopefully.
Oh,
but when girls see you run onto the pitch, you know.
Yeah, hopefully. Do you know what? If that happens and they see that, that's great, isn't it? Really. Yeah.
I think there's someone over there that you do.
That's it.
I think you just pointed
Oh,
out.
nice to meet you. Yeah.
Gemma, anyone in particular who helped you a lot? I mean, in any aspect of your sort of football journey?
Do you know, the same as Amy, really. Because I, at the time when I was playing when I was young, it really was just players that I looked up to, who kind of were the main kind of faces of women's football at the time. So it was players like Jane Ludlow, again playing against her. She was always a player that I looked up to, because she was so good, I suppose. She was a great player, but again, there's not many women. No, not like I think of.
No, I mean, or men who you felt that were kind of really instrumental, or...
Do you know, actually, she probably hate me for saying this, but a very good friend of mine runs the Reading women's team, so Kelly Chambers is probably someone who kind of inspired me a little bit, because she, at a young age, she took the Reading women's team from nothing. They were kind of at the bottom of the ladder, and she took it on herself to kind of make Reading women and get them to where they are now. And a lot of the time she's done that all through hard work and passion for football. So yeah, I suppose she is a role model.
That's a very good choice. Yeah. Very good choice. Kath?
You never hear the end of that.
No, I said it.
I think I'm a similar age to Gem, so growing up there wasn't a huge amount. I was. You can't do it now, you have to be 16 to play an adult football now, but when I came through you could be 14. So that's quite a shock to the system to go into an adult team at 14. But some of the players I played with in the past who were still playing into their 30s, and I mean some of them are probably still playing now in their 60s, I'd imagine, because they played because they loved football, and they really inspired me to keep doing it, because as we said, it's easier to do it when you're 14 and you're enthusiastic, and it's hard to not get jaded by the comments and things like that, as we said, but to see people who just got together as women on a Sunday for any level to play football was quite a driving force for me, and certainly something I still remember now, so 20 years later, 25 years later.
But yeah, they have an impact, don't they, that lasts forever?
Yeah, absolutely. And probably as a male one would be my dad, because he was one who never had the thought that you couldn't do that. So even when I was 5 or 6, I was doing judo and things. And then without him going, we'll go, like, you want to play football? I'll drive you to football training. I wouldn't have been able to do it. So that was a huge thing, and there was never the thought for him. My brother wasn't, he loves watching football, he was never into playing it or anything like that. And so I was the one that did it, and there was never a thought of my dad being like, well, my son's not into it, so I guess I'm not a football parent. It was just, Kath is, so we'll do that.
Yeah.
So
actually, that's a very good point. I don't think you can take that for granted, because I'm sure there were plenty of dads through, I mean, it's a case through no fault of their own, basically being brought up by society to feel like, well, their little girls shouldn't play football, basically. So
yeah,
actually,
I think
that's sort of,
because my older brother, as I say, he's not really into playing sports, and my dad very much was. I think he was just delighted to have the opportunity to have a kid that he could drive anywhere and do any sport that he wanted them to sit them down and do. I'd play any sport.
I think we're the same. My dad was like, you're the son I never had, and my big brother didn't like football. Lauren, do you want to mention anyone?
Yeah, I was pretty much a little boy when I grew up. I actually was. And so do you know what? I was probably one of them people that I now despise, because I grew up and I actually probably didn't like girls' football myself. Because I always associated myself with always being with the lads, always being with the boys. And I played boys' football up until I was about 14, 15. So, and like I can say it now, but it's like 10 years later, 12. I can't remember how old I am. But I was one of them people that actually probably did turn my nose. I hated playing against girls. I'd had some weird anxiety of playing against girls, because I felt like I had to be the best, because I was successful in boys football and played at a good level. And then when it got to the year where I couldn't play boys football anymore and I had to play girls football, I hated it. And I was like, what is this? And I hate that now that I was ever like that. And it probably took me until I went into an academy to really understand, actually, bloody hell, like, there are other very, very talented females. And like I said, it probably took me until I got to Bristol and working with Lowry that I actually realised, and I didn't never probably appreciated, women in sport and women football and whatever as much as I did until I met her. And she completely flipped my perspective on the whole game. And working with her, then working with the likes like Richard Blackmore when I come here, and I'll say nothing but good things about him, because he, for me, was the absolutely driving force of women's football, of this football club at the time. And the things he did that went unnoticed still frustrate me to this day, because what he did was absolutely incredible. And I still run this academy wishing I can run it like him, knowing I can't, because I can never do the things he used to do, because I can't drive, first of all, and I can't drive a lawnmower, first of all, and I can't cut pitches. But I still look up to him in terms of what he did and all the unpaid hours and all the going above and beyond and to do what I can here, and then working over City and Justin is an absolutely incredible in terms of they're not there to tick boxes, they're there because they actually believe in you. And I think when I respect somebody like that, they're people that will stay, that I'll stay very passionate towards. So Larry was there because she believed in what I did. That comes to here. Richard was definitely not a box ticking man, and he did things for the best intentions. And working over at City, Justin's very much saying he's given me some phenomenal opportunities, not because I'm a female, but because he actually backs me and believes what I can do. And I've had some incredible opportunities there, which hopefully will continue moving on. So,
Great stuff. Well, thank you everyone for your